woman with a face full of scars held a slipper in her mouth, trembling all over like a frightened dog. Then a bucket of foul-smelling slop was poured over her head. But she still didn't dare to move. Immediately after, a man kicked her in the abdomen. Her body slammed into the corner of a table behind her. The intense pain left Wong To gasping for breath. Seeing her miserable state, the group slowly walked away. Although Wong To was barely alive, she still refused to leave, because she wanted to atone for her mistake from 5 years ago, when she was a reckless addict, who once hit a pregnant woman during a high-speed joyride, and this woman was Officer Jean's wife. The baby was lost on the spot. His wife suffered brain death, became a vegetative state, and had both legs amputated due to severe fractures. Since then, Officer Jean became a different person, vowing to fight crime relentlessly, using violent law enforcement to vent his anger. During a police operation, he unexpectedly found Wong To, who had been released from prison, and his hatred resurfaced, like a painful wisdom tooth. So he tracked Wong To by car that night, at one point wanting to run her over. Wong To realized the driver was Officer Jean, and she panicked, jumping onto the car roof to escape. But Officer Jean continued to chase her, violently pinning her to the ground, pulling out his gun in a rage to avenge his wife. To remove this painful wisdom tooth from his heart, fortunately, his partner Akai arrived in time to stop, and Wong To took the opportunity to flee, quickly boarding a bus, hoping to escape far away. But the memory of hitting the pregnant woman haunted her, repeatedly condemning her conscience. She slapped herself wildly, venting her remorse. Unable to forgive her own cowardice and evasion, so she immediately stopped the bus and got off. The next day, she went to the police station to find Officer Jean, wanting to make amends for her mistake, then seek his forgiveness. But as soon as Officer Jean saw her, he immediately slapped her, knocking her to the ground. Wong To hastily offered to be his informant, reporting various crimes in the slums, hoping to atone for her sins. But Officer Jean still didn't care, and continued to beat her, using the information she provided, to arrest the criminals one by one, thanking Wong To for her cooperation in front of them. No word could express gratitude for your help with the police in setting up the operation.
Yes, sir.
I have now found another case. Miss Wang over here. Miss Wang. Over here. After the criminals were released, they sought revenge on Wong To. Although she was already covered in wounds, she still refused to leave, gritting her teeth to atone for her sins. Officer Jean intensified his tasks, asking her to gather information on all the drug dealers in the slums. It turned out that Officer Jean was investigating a serial murder case where all the victims were female addicts, who were killed after having their left hands chopped off and their bodies dumped near the garbage dumps in the slums. Which is why Wong To was gathering information on the drug dealers. That night, she handed the information to Officer Jean, who unexpectedly asked her to lead the way. Wong To took off her mask, revealing her scarred face, which made Officer Jean pause. Who are we? I never asked about that. Hearing Officer Jean say this, Wong To put her mask back on and led the way. She hoped that after this, their grudges could be settled. But upon entering the drug den, they found no clues. And the drug dealers spotted Wong To, glaring at her menacingly. Then, they continued to search for the drug dealers, finally finding a clue with a female drug dealer, learning that the murderer was Japanese. So they decided to take the female drug dealer back to the station, allowing Wong To to leave first. She wanted to say something to Officer Jean, but before she could speak, Officer Jean walked past her without a word, so Wong To silently turned to leave. But as she reached the stairway, she saw the drug dealers coming up, and she fled in terror. Climbing out of a window, the drug dealers chased after her, pushing her from the second floor, causing her to fall heavily to the ground. But she didn't dare to stop, dragging her injured leg as she moved, eventually being surrounded by the drug dealers, who would take everything away. They had just arrived at the third floor. The third floor. You, Totoro?
Wong To wielded a short knife wildly,
but he was facing a group of thugs.
He was quickly kicked to the ground. Then a group of people swarmed him.
Amid the chaos, Wong To accidentally stabbed a drug dealer in the stomach. This made things even more uncontrollable. Wong To used nearby objects to defend himself, while loudly shouting for help. Nearby, Akai heard and rushed over, quickly drawing his gun to intervene. Unexpectedly, a drug dealer hit him from behind, knocking him to the ground. Wong To desperately fled into a car to close the door, trying to fend off the drug dealers. Akai was knocked out in the chaos, and his gun rolled away. The drug dealer smashed the car window, and Wong To quickly crawled out from the other side, grabbing the gun on the ground, and warned the drug dealers to back off with the gun. Didn't give up the gun. Right? Gave up the gun. On the other side, Janga heard the gunshot and quickly ran towards the sound. Unbeknownst to him, just beyond a wall, a killer was covering a female drug dealer's mouth and nose. Wong To took the opportunity to escape, but fell halfway and dropped the gun. Worried someone was chasing him, he didn't pick up the gun and kept running, then hid in an abandoned car. Trembling, not daring to make a sound, but was still found by Zhang. Zhang looked at the battered Wong To, and suddenly felt a wave of guilt. But Akai was already panicked by losing his gun. I'll go to the car. Ah, Lao Fan, come out.